Hello and welcome to today's webinar, exclusive insight into the Veeam 2021 Ransomware Retrospective Report. Ransomware is plaguing companies of all sizes, and we have to do whatever we can do to protect ourselves. The insight that you'll gain today on this event will be invaluable in your ransomware prevention, remediation, and recovery strategy. So this is a hot topic. Be prepared to learn a lot on the event today. Before we get started, I should point out that this event is part of the Veeam TrailBlazer Talk series. This has been an amazing series of events around the Veeam TrailBlazer Talks, and there's a lot more to come. So make sure that you stay tuned for those. Watch your email inbox for upcoming invitations. I'm going to be introducing you to today's expert presenters here in just a moment. But before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the event. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm glad to be hosting the event today. We want this to be educational, as always, and we encourage your questions. They're in the questions pane of your audience console. We are all former IT professionals here at Actual Tech Media. We know how tough it can be out there for those of you who are responsible for protecting your organization from ransomware and recovering, should you be infected. So we want to help to solve your challenges. We'll be taking your questions live. So submit your questions during the discussion here, and we'll be answering your questions at the end of the event. We also have a best question prize to help encourage those questions, and we appreciate all the comments already that have been coming in. I also want to point out that we've got an excellent handout there available for download in your audience console. This is the handout that we'll be discussing on the webinar today. It's the Veeam 2021 Ransomware Retrospective Report. So make sure that you download that PDF asset now. It's there in the handouts tab. It won't be as easily accessible after the event as it is right now if you just click on that and then click download in your web browser. All right. And I should also mention at the end of the webinar, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing would have already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found there in the handouts tab. And then we also have our best question prize today for an additional Amazon $50 gift card. If you have something on your mind, a question around ransomware or data protection or disaster recovery, this is a great opportunity to ask that question, and you'll be entered into the prize drawing for the best question. Of course, you still must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, and we'll reach out to the prize winner after the event. All right. So with that, it's time to kick off today's expert discussion. I'm excited now to bring in our experts from Veeam. There they are. I'm excited to welcome Mr. Jeff Reichard, Senior Director of Enterprise Strategy, and Chris Hoff, Data Protection and Ransomware Marketing Manager, both from Veeam. Chris and Jeff, it's great to have you on. Jeff, I'll hand it off to you first. Take it away.
Great to be here. Thanks so much, David. I think we have an intro slide. Fantastic. Thanks so much for the introduction, David. It's great to be here with everyone today. Delighted to see we've got people from all over the United States. I like all the shout outs that we're seeing in the Q&A from different locations. We've got Wisconsin, we've got California, we've got Charlotte, North Carolina, and a number of others. Again, as David mentioned, my name is Jeff Reichard. I work in the office of the CTO at Veeam on the product strategy team, which means I spend a lot of time speaking with Veeam customers about what they're going through and a lot of time talking with industry analysts. And as David mentioned up top, ransomware is one of the things that seems to come up in every one of those conversations these days. I expect, Chris, your experience is a lot the same.
It is. It's definitely something that is keeping a lot of people employed, and I would argue a lot of people from sleeping very well at night these days, right?
Yep, absolutely. There was some good news yesterday. I think folks probably saw, at least there were some arrests that are being made for some of the ransomware gangs. So that's progress. What we're going to be going through today is we're going to be looking at some information that's in a retrospective report that Veeam just put out. That report covers data that Veeam collected in 2 surveys of our customer base. This is surveys of a couple of thousand people that happened both in 2018 and then late again last year, 2020. And Chris, why don't we jump right in and you can start walking us through some of the stats that we got in the course of the surveys that we did.
Absolutely. And it's always interesting to look at where we've come from and this is the time of year where folks like us are going to start making predictions for next year. And I'll just start off by saying my prediction for next year is that ransomware is not going to be called ransomware anymore. I think that we're on the cusp of that term being modified into some new functionality, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the first piece is nothing new. I mean, spam is still the number 1 attack vector across the board, and it's been true for 30 years. So we know that it's easy, it's effective. People are either, some would argue, uneducated, right? But I would argue that we're all just so busy, and particularly in the pandemic, we've been so busy just catching up virtually that it's very easy to just miss the signs that an email is spam and click on that link. As a matter of fact, I just got an email the other day that looked exactly like my Apple Care program for my MacBook, and it was really good. The only thing that was different is that it went to my different email account. That's the only thing that triggered me, that said that wasn't going to be the right email, or that was a bad email. And when I put it into my personal lab and let it go, I was certainly right. It was bad. What's interesting on our survey too is that RDP is still a problem. And I was kind of surprised by this. A lot of companies are locking down RDP, but what this seems to be saying is that either because of the pandemic or the work from home that we're doing, we're having to open these ports up, and maybe because we're moving so fast, we're not securing them as well as maybe we should. So that's, if there's any recommendations we can make, that would be the first thing that I would look at is who's got access to your stuff. But
I think you and I have probably heard the same thing from customers, especially around what everyone everywhere went through last year. I talked with the CIO of one city in California who said, no exaggeration, they put in place their 4-year remote work and remote citizen services plan in a period of 4 days when
wow.
everything got locked down last March. And it's not a surprise that sometimes if you move that fast, some things get overlooked. So yeah, seeing the growth from 2018, where remote access was only mentioned by 5% of the respondents in this survey. And again, this is Veeam customers worldwide, a couple of thousand folks. And it's up to 48%, or I'm sorry, it's up to 21%. And then the spam email, exactly as you mentioned, from 48% in 2018 up to 60% of respondents that had been hit by it last year. So let's go forward one, and let's start walking through, Chris, some of the other news. And it's so tempting to be all gloom and doom when you talk about ransomware, because there are a lot of scary, tragic news stories that are out there now. But there was actually some good news that we saw in the evolution of the folks who responded to this survey. You want to walk us through those?
Absolutely. And I love the fact that we've got good news when we're talking about ransomware. It's very easy to become complacent when looking at ransomware or looking at any kind of threat that they're all the same. But we've seen in our surveys a reduction in data loss, which is fantastic, which that tells me that folks are moving from a detection focused mentality to a response and recovery based mentality, which is fantastic, because if we can reduce the amount of data we've lost, we're effectively speeding up our ability to recover. And the next piece
That
of
ties,
good
that
news,
ties right into the next one. Yeah.
yep, is that downtime has been reduced. We've gone from 41% of our respondents exhibiting some severe downtime down to 24%. I mean, that's almost 50% reduction right there. It's fantastic news, and of course, productivity loss. If we reduce downtime, we're gonna increase our productivity. I don't know about any of you, but the whole work from home thing has had some interesting effects on productivity. Particularly here in the Northeast, when the power goes out, my productivity goes down. But from a ransomware perspective, we're because we're not losing data, because we're not losing time, we're also not reducing the amount of work that we can do. And this is my favorite statistic. The fact that our customers are reporting that 91% of the, or sorry, over 70% of our customers reported that they were able to get back 91% of their data, which is an amazing statistic, and it really shows off that preparation pays.
Yep.
What do you think
Absolutely.
about that, Jeff?
It is nice to see good news. The data recovery stats are good, and obviously, and this is pretty well known. I think most folks are aware. Most of the cost associated with ransomware attacks is not from paying the ransom. It's the downtime, it's the recovery time, it's the steps you have to go through. It's the ongoing impact to your organization's reputation or operations or potential lawsuits or regulatory impacts. All those things add up to a big price tag. So anything that you can do to avoid the data being lost and to avoid downtime and lost productivity is going to really, really help with all of those escalating costs that come down the road. Now, all those good results are happening because of some causes. And it was interesting to see what things our user base pointed out that they had changed, that they had done in order to respond to ransomware if they'd been hit once. So you want to walk us through those, Chris?
Yeah, and I'll point out too that this is not about detecting more ransomware or more threats. And I think the industry has accepted that, and we've noticed over the last 5-7 years or so that even the malware vendors, the AV vendors traditionally, have moved into the world of EDR, endpoint detection and response, or now we're talking about XDR for fancy terms. But the idea that we can only detect so much and we have to take other measures is starting to pay off. And the first one is that our users are becoming more sophisticated. They're better trained, and so 20% of our users, our survey customers, told us that they've actively increased user training and have seen definite benefits. Now, on the next piece, from a technology perspective, folks, because of the need to recover and not having a silver bullet and all the euphemisms that we like to use, about 19% of our respondents said that they've upgraded their storage infrastructure, their backup infrastructure, to implement things like immutability or object lock, right? To make sure that they can have that ultra resilient storage. And I know ultra resilient isn't a word, but there it is. But over half of our respondents said that they modernized their storage infrastructure, which is fantastic.
It makes sense. And I'm sure that the folks that are on our call today, you've seen the news. It is a standard tactic at this point for all of the ransomware operators to look around, see if they can find any kind of data protection in place and attack it. And so here at Veeam, and we'll dig into this a little bit more in a couple of minutes, we've evangelized various things that folks who use our platform can do to make sure their backup data remains safe from an adversary even if that adversary has been on the network for a significant length of time and has compromised some of your admin credentials, there's a lot of options that you have. And we spend a lot of time doing things like this, but also doing a lot more focused technical education with our user base, going to increased user training to let people know there are some relatively simple things that you can do that really improve your posture when you're faced with a ransomware actor attacking your organization. So it's nice to see that a lot of these steps that are being taken kind of, again, I know it's a commonly said thing, but we talk a lot about defense in depth these days. And the notion that, to your point, Chris, there is no silver bullet. You need to make sure that you're looking for the malware, that you're locking down places where adversaries can get access, but you also need a good last line of defense. And that's what backups are for people. Now, we got some more interesting details about the attacks themselves. In particular, how much data was encrypted in these attacks. And this is from the 2020 survey results. Do you want to walk us through what we found out there, Chris?
Yeah, so a lot of our customers are seeing less of their production data encrypted, which is interesting. It goes to increases in things like network hygiene, segmentation, better access control, that type of thing. But what I really think is interesting is that only 5% of our respondents had a significant amount, and 91% there was encrypted, had their data encrypted fully. And so it really shows us that whole idea of preparation that you were talking about, Jeff, is paying off. And what's interesting too, and this isn't in the report, but there's a significant increase to your earlier point about the bad actors going after your backups. The fact that a lot of backups are not natively encrypted means that when you have data theft going on, right, that secondary ransom, if you will, or some people call it big game hunting. The actual backup objects are the interesting thing to steal because all of your data is in one place, and the fact that our data is backed up, our data is encrypted when it's backed up, means that that's not available to the bad actors, right? They get an object that they can't really do anything with. But it's really nice to see again the amount of data that's being affected is going down, so that we can have that resiliency. And I think that really is, again, because we're focusing more on preparation of response and recovery than we are on what I'll call active defenses and trying to catch one more piece of malware than the other guys.
Exactly. It's kind of interesting seeing how different forces are all converging around this threat. I think we've all seen some of the headlines about government action being taken, including the coordinated justice response that's going on in terms of arresting some of these bad actors in different places around the world. But we have lots of different kinds of industry that are looking at this. Cyber insurance is looking at this. You may be in the position, I've spoken with a number of customers, Chris, you probably have too, where your organization is having your potential customers actually audit your security practices. That is becoming much, much more common, where before someone that you're trying to win and do business with is going to do business with you, they want to make sure that, their data isn't compromised if you have a security incident, or that 6 months of work with your firm doesn't go down the tubes if there's a ransomware attack that successfully destroys data. So it's very interesting to see the forces that are converging to make this stuff better. And of course, some of the reasons for that, to stray from our good news, are the scale of the threat. You want to walk us through this? This is from the Sophos 2021 report, right, Chris?
It is. So this is the Sophos report from earlier this year, and they are malware experts. And what we're seeing is, or what they're seeing, I should say, is that the ransom itself is increasing. But to your point, Jeff, earlier, the total cost of the attack for your average organization, and they were looking at kind of mid-range organizations, is just under $2 million. Um, and you made the point really well, Jeff, that it's about your fixed costs, right? Because you don't stop paying your employees when your systems go down. You don't stop paying benefits. All of those fixed costs are there. You have to deal with them, and when everybody's idle, even whether it's a manufacturing environment or it's a software development house, you are still paying a lot of money for people to just sit around. But
Yep.
the interesting stat here that is that the idea of extortion or big game hunting has more than doubled between 2020 and 2021. And I think that's one of the reasons, to my point earlier, that we're going to start seeing the term ransomware get deprecated a little bit, right? Because it's not just about encrypting the data where it sits. It's about monetizing the data with threats of exposing your deepest, darkest secrets.
Right, exactly. We had a great question from Megan. Why is ransomware so successful? And Megan, it's perfect because this is the next slide that we had. And if you've done any security reading, you've probably encountered the whole people, process, technology triad that security experts talk about. Chris, walk us through some of these.
This is the most frustrating slide to me, because a lot of the reason that ransomware is successful has nothing to do with the defenses that we put in place. And each one of these actually comes from different attacks, right? So down on the bottom left hand side there, alert fatigue. If you go back to 2013, the Target breach, they saw their security products saw the attack. They alerted, and because the folks in the security operations center were so overwhelmed with data coming into their SIM, they simply missed it. And that's not a dig at all on the security folks, because they're seeing gigabytes of just transaction logs every day. And so it's very easy to just kind of miss the alert that goes by. And another reason is missing patches. We see it both because it's incredibly hard to keep your systems patched, with all the regression testing and everything else. But there's been a couple instances where people just missed a patch. They thought they installed it. It failed to install, and it just never got reinstalled.
Yep.
The
Yep.
infuriating one is poor password policies. This makes me crazy. Um, the fact that password 123 is still a thing is just insane. Um,
And
a little
I
tougher.
think people looking at these, you've seen, I know folks looking have seen a lot of these issues. We've talked about network segmentation and other experts writing about these things. The good news is, so these are, Megan, to answer your question, some of the reasons that ransomware can be so effective in organizations, but there are some things that you can do. One of them, of course, is to make sure that you have a secure backup. There are a lot of features that this slide talks about. We're not going to dig into those in detail, but the point is you want to make sure that you've got different options for keeping your backup data safe, and that you've got options for verifying that your backups will work when you need them, and to make sure that you don't restore malware back into your environment. If you're curious about these, we are going to have a resources slide in a couple of minutes, and I want to make sure that Chris and I get a chance to answer your questions, because we do have a lot of great questions that have come in from the audience. So, Chris, before we jump into questions, why don't you walk us through some of the best practices that tie into the weaknesses that you were talking about in the last slide.
Absolutely. So the first is actually the first two are my pet peeve, which is two-factor authentication and investing in password managers. If you run an IT shop, going out and getting your employees, the password manager of your choice, whether it's LastPass or something else, is going to pay you back in spades. The idea that we have single sign-on, I'm going to use air quotes on that one, is no matter how good you do is still a myth, because there's always going to be that one outside service, and it's probably your healthcare benefits that is going to require a different password. Having those ultra resilient backups, there's that word we made up again. Giving you the ability to restore quickly, and we're working on some benchmarks to show that it's faster to restore the data than it is to pay the ransom. And to make sure that you're testing your backups regularly is incredibly important, because the number of times that I've talked to folks who have had an incident, they've gone to restore from backups and the backup is corrupted, or the disk has died or the tape, if they're still using tape, the tape has been corrupted, is incredible. It's the only word I can come up with.
It's completely true. And to get technical, we talk about the 32110 rule. We talk about network segmentation. There's a lot of things that go into this. I want to make sure that we do get time, because we're running up on the end of our period here. So if you're interested in both this report and additional information, what we've put on this slide, the first two are Veeam links. You'll see there the ransomware retrospective report, and also a large number of other papers, some of which Chris and I have authored during our work here at Veeam. But there's also good resources out there from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, from the CISA division of the Department of Homeland Security. So there's a lot of different resources that are out there that you can take advantage of, and we would encourage you to look at those things. Now, Chris, I want to choose through some of our questions. These are just fantastic.
There's a lot of good questions there.
Yeah, these are good, and we'll get back. We'll get to a lot of folks. What's the recommended time frame that can what systems the majority of users relying on to recover from ransomware? This is a question from Rob. Do you have any stats on that? I know what I see a lot of folks using, but Chris, do you have a roll-up view of that?
So it depends on what you're referring to for the system. So I'm seeing a lot of folks backing up straight to disk, essentially non-volatile RAM, right? But tape is still alive and well out there, which is kind of crazy. But if you're taking something offline for a long time, you're archiving data, it's still great and it's still cheap. There was an interesting question that came in about can you recommend from Rob? Actually, it was from Rob again. Can you recommend any guidelines around how to allocate your IT security budget to deal with the majority of actual and surveyed threats? So this is going to go off script a little bit. I'm going to use air quotes. What I would do is start with an analysis of where you're at in your security maturity journey. Gartner in particular has put out a really good set of guidelines on security maturity, the five levels, and has given some really good guidance on how to assess where you are and build a roadmap for where you want to be. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with technology. It has more to do with training of people and training of, and when I say people, I mean security staff as well as end users, and the creation of policies. And the other thing that I would look at is the MITRE ATT&CK framework does a really good job of pulling in who is attacking you, so that you can build your defenses around those specific types of attacks, as well as the more, I'll call them, commercialized attacks.
Fantastic.
So that was a great.
Yep. We capture all the questions that were asked. There were too many to go through, I think, if we want to respect time. And David, I believe I'm going to turn things back over to you to wrap up our call. But folks, thanks for the great questions. I hope this has been informative. And I know that Chris and I both really, really enjoyed having a chance to go through some of the things that we found in the report and some of the things that you can do to make sure you don't become a statistic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation, a great discussion, Jeff and Chris. I learned a lot. I know the audience did as well. There's obviously a lot of interest in this and a lot of great questions coming in. So we really appreciate that. Chris and Jeff, it's been great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My
It's
pleasure.
been fun.
Thanks, David.
And before we go, I do want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. This is going out to our prize winner, Paul Schwartz from Michigan. Congratulations to Paul Schwartz from Michigan. We'll reach out to you, and we'll also be reaching out to our best question prize winner as well. Thank you so much to everyone out there who asked such excellent questions. I hope that everyone will check out the handouts tab there. It's there that you can download the Veeam 2021 Ransomware Retrospective report that we discussed here on the Veeam Trailblazer Talk event today. Thank you for joining us on the webinar, and I hope to see you on another upcoming Veeam Trailblazer Talk. Have a great day. Bye-bye.